Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets, where we give you the strategies, the mindsets, and the frameworks to building your own 6 and even 7-figure coaching business. I am, of course, your host with the most, the road dog. But who has more? Who has more to give than me? None other than the man, the Dolphin King, the King of the Caribbean himself, Karl Bryan. Welcome to the program, sir.
Shit. How are you doing, buddy? What's happening, man? What's happening?
Doing just swell, my friend. Super duper busy. Folks, by the way, if you ever wonder, wow, these guys are so polished and organized, if you could only tap into them like 10 minutes before the show, you would have a very, very different perspective. So
audio challenges are a son of a gun.
Continue after 5 years. Oh my God. If I had $1 shoots for every time I heard you say test, I'd probably have about $358.
Like test. You're like, oh, he's like, oh my God, just start. Just don't worry about it. Anyway, let's all good. They don't need to know about our trials and tribulations in pre-show, my brother.
Buddy, this is going under the hood, as they say, is behind the curtain, right? Hey, speaking of upgrading, oh my God, your microphone? No. We were earlier talking about the upgrade effect. And I really want to get back to this because I really would like you to explain this to us because I think this is massive.
Yeah. Okay. Well, happily, but hang on. That came on the back of something that you said. So do you mind? You were saying something earlier. You read something earlier. Could you read that? Because I thought it was awesome.
Okay. I forget the source of this, so you'll have to excuse me on it. But it says, life used to be about survival. Now that surviving is so easy, everyone is obsessed with being happy. And life isn't about being happy. Humans didn't evolve to be happy. We're constantly discontent to ensure we struggle to thrive. Happiness in itself is an impossible goal. The easiest way to make yourself unhappy is to measure your life purely by how happy you are. A healthier mindset is to accept that you don't care if you're happy or not. I don't care how I feel because my decisions are conscious. I never want to go to the gym, but I always go. I still train when I feel lazy, and that list goes on.
Nice. Okay, so hopefully you guys like that. But again, when you need to go to the gym, like people who go to the gym every single day are, just like you and just like me, by the way. You think I want to go to the gym every day, but what I do is I just go to the days that I don't want to go to the gym, that I guarantee that I'm going to go to the gym, including when I have the sniffles. So the upgrade effect on the back of that is that most people try to upgrade outcomes, which, by the way, makes sense. And I'm doing that. Hopefully you're doing that. Road Dog's definitely doing that. But the real upgrade is identity first and then outcomes. And that'll make the outcomes last for you and, very importantly, your clients, right? It's going to provide lasting change, right? So it starts with identity shift, identity upgrade. So despite popular advice, your thoughts don't change your life, right? Why? Your mindset is not the bottom rung of the ladder. So if I rolled it into a flywheel, okay, so I want you to picture a clock out in front of you, or you write it down, okay? So at the 12 o'clock of the clock, you're going to put mindset. And I would imagine that you want a bigger mindset, a more impressive mindset, a mindset that is not driven to try and be happy. It's more realistic that it's trying to get better and it's trying to experience peace. At the end of the day, you want an upgraded mindset, right? So that's 12 o'clock. Well, your mindset is built on your beliefs. So let's put that at 2 o'clock, which is built on your values. So put that at 4 o'clock, which is built on your identity, which is at 6 o'clock. And then, by the way, your identity is built on the stories that you tell yourself. So we put that at, so I'm at 8 o'clock. Okay, so you got to adjust that a little bit, right? Ideally, that would be at 10. But stories you tell yourself, right? What are the critical stories that your clients tell themselves, that you tell yourself? It would be, what is the truth? What do you believe? What do you believe to be true, right? What is real and what is not? What is real? What is right? Who are you as a person? What do you deserve would be one of those stories. And then really importantly, who are you, right? And then that circles back to mindset. So that circles back to mindset. So again, so you've got mindset as you go around the clock, you got mindset, you got beliefs, you got values, you got identity, and then you've got stories. And again, the stories you tell yourself, what is real, what is right, what is true, what do you deserve, who are you as a person, and then very, very importantly, who are you, right? And it circles back to your mindset. So anyway, so the premise of that and the conversation Road Dog and I were having just earlier, the upgrade effect sounds good, okay, but you really got to do, if you want lasting change and you want it to be real and meaningful and long term, you got to upgrade the identity first. And you do that with mindset, beliefs, values, identity, and the stories you're telling yourself. And by the way, if you hear that and you go, I like it, one of the world's proven and best ways for you to upgrade your identity is to read constantly. So anyway, Shoots, how did I do? That's what we talked about? What do you think?
Oh, that's good. That's a perfect segue into getting into your personal library. And what are you reading now?
My personal library.
Actually, that's a layup question if I ever had one. Right there, it's like,
Shoots.
What am I going to possibly ask? Let's see.
What am I reading? What if I'm reading nothing, Shoots?
You're reading Archie comics, aren't you? That's what it is.
Maybe not.
Hang on. Before we completely derail the show, are you a Betty or Veronica guy?
Oh, Betty the brunette for sure. My wife will be listening, so she's a brunette.
Smart man. All right. Anyway, sorry. I had to go there when I said Archie comics. What book are you reading?
So Elon Musk, autobiography. In fact, truthfully, I've got it my new Meta sunglasses, which I can't recommend highly enough. I love them. So when I'm walking the beach and I'm at the gym, but right now you turn that on, I have got Elon Musk. By the way, I'm going through it for definitely the third time. I've poked through it a number of times. Anyway, so answer is Elon Musk. And by the way, I want to say autobiographies and stories of success, legitimate long-term success. Remember, there's two things that are very rare: old and rich. Somebody who you know who is old and rich, be a really, really good idea to sit him down and chat to them. But anyway, so autobiographies are very, very powerful, and I think a step above, well and truly, on the self-help book or the new book on sales, etc. So anyway, so answers Elon Musk. Shoots.
Okay, so follow-on question. Are your Meta, what are they called?
Sunglasses.
They're just the sunglasses? Are those similar to the X-ray glasses I used to get in my cereal box?
They look a little like that. I gotta tell you, I don't know that they're that complimentary with my big nose, but anyway, I like it.
But so you're reading Elon. Dude, you have read a lot on Elon, but just give us an Elon Musk takeaway.
Oh gosh, so many. And by the way, you might love Elon, and you might dislike Elon at a high level. I got to tell you, I think you'd be smart to put that aside. Everybody would be put that aside and look at it objectively. I mean, the man is brilliant by every definition. But anyway, so the biggest mistakes here's one, like biggest mistake engineers make is optimizing a system that shouldn't exist in the first place, right? So it makes me think of our new AI business coaching dojo, which by the way is awesome and unbelievable, like the utility on the back end. I think I said this on a podcast recently, but like the goal was to get like 1,000 sessions per 7 days per week. And the week before Christmas, we had 4,000. So to say that I'm happy with that would be an understatement. But so imagine you built an AI business coaching dojo, okay? And it was in beta. It's out of beta. It's working really well. But at the end of the day, we had to fix some bugs, right? Well, the question is, before we go and spend an enormous amount of time fixing this bug, that bug, and every bug, the higher level question is the framework right? Is the UX dialed in, as in the user experience, right? So the goal is to make it intuitive, like that would be pretty obvious, right? It's kind of Steve Jobs 101. So you want to make it intuitive. So fixing bugs on something that should disappear and shouldn't be there. So just think, like Steve Jobs was famous for like removing steps, right? He wanted things to, if you could do something in one click instead of 3 clicks, he was always going to vote for 1 click, which sounds obvious, but the problem is, how the heck do you make it so that it's only 1 click? And the reason it's 3 clicks is it requires 3 clicks, right? Anyway, so that hopefully you're getting that, like the user experience is significantly more important than maybe the spelling error, right? Where I think a lot of people get lost in the spelling errors when they really should be dialed in on the the user experience, on the framework. When you're coaching, I always say this, like, we have an operating system to be installed. And by the way, that's the whole premise of the AI business coaching dojo. But like talking to your client about their marriage problems and the staff problems and this problem and that problem and all the problems that they drag you into the weeds, you'd be significantly better off to say, look, let's stay on the railroad tracks. The goal is to make you wildly profitable. That's why you hired me. Let's make this P&L really, really sexy. So let's do it my way for 90 days. And after 90 days, if it's not working the way that we expect and your P&L isn't getting sexier and your bank account isn't growing, let's go back to doing it your way. Will you do that for me for 90 days? That would be a bad example, but a good example of kind of, at the end of the day, you got to make sure that you've got the framework. But then my question is as you're coaching your clients, do you have railroad tracks, right? Because we certainly do. Like the jump, we have the 12 steps, to make a wildly more profitable business. And they're not monumental. They're designed to not be monumental because you're supposed to be looking to get a 5% upgrade, but you got to do it in multiple areas to get that compounding effect, right? Anyway, so that would be the biggest mistake he sees a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people making, is they're optimizing things that shouldn't even be there in the first place, right? And look, Elon Musk, he's got 5 steps. You take him a problem, he wants to solve it, right? That's his superpower. He takes on big problems and then solves them. He's got 5 steps. And then step number 1, and I might mess these up, the order or whatever, but at the end of the day, he's got 5 steps, and it's like clear requirements. Okay, so step number 1 is you have to define the clear requirements. So like at SpaceX, the requirement was he wanted to build rockets that can be reused to lower launch costs. Reused being the operative word. It's clear, it's measurable, certainly ambitious, but at the end of the day, it's very, very clear. Don't build them something if it couldn't be reused. He knew that a lot of this stuff was going to not work and it's going to be very, very expensive. So that was like the requirement. And then he would go to eliminate things that aren't needed, right? So like Tesla removed traditional, like the dealership network, right? Like the middleman, instead of selling through dealerships, he went to direct to consumer online. And by the way, Amazon did the exact same thing, right? So they cut out the middleman. So the internet effectively becomes the middleman, reduce costs, simplify the customer experience. And apparently it's working out. It's working out pretty well, right? Could be better, working out pretty well. And then he would go simplify and optimize. So SpaceX simplified rocket design by using fewer parts and standardizing components, right? Just reducing complexity. And he made, maintenance and servicing and all the, eliminated a lot of friction, I'm going to say, but simplify and optimize. And then he says accelerate the cycle time. So like Tesla rapidly iterates for software upgrades, right? But what they do is they push the improvements directly to the car. What do you have to do when you own a Toyota or a Ford? You got to call the dealership, book your car in for a service, take it in, and then they do the upgrade. Well, Tesla press a button, right? So customers aren't waiting for years for upgrades or months or weeks, and not having to not be without their car. They get them instantly loaded into the car. And again, Ford, Toyota, Chevrolet still a thing. You know what I mean? So these the traditional companies are just not doing that, right? Very importantly, Shoots, the last one is the most important one, but automate last, not first. Most people, in his opinion, people automate a little bit like optimizing a system that shouldn't be there. Automate last, not first, right? So SpaceX, they first perfected manual rocket assembly before introducing robotics. They didn't introduce robotics early on, right? Why? Automation came only after the process was lean, it was efficient, it was cost effective, would need to come into there, right? Anyway, so that's kind of the like 5 steps that, clear requirements, eliminate anything you can, simplify, optimize, accelerate the flow, accelerate the cycle time, and then very importantly, hopefully this is the last, hopefully I got them all there, but automate last, not first. And I can't recommend the book highly enough. I've read it a few times, and I suggest you do if your goal is to become an elite entrepreneur. Remember, the hack of business, the ultimate hack in business isn't a strategy. It's not a tactic. It's a level of thinking. Anybody who's been exposed to Elon Musk and his books and any of his stuff would agree that he thinks at a very, very high level, and that's his superpower. And you don't, and do I think like Elon Musk? Like, as if, right? Not even a speck, right? But at the same time, I can learn from him, and I can dummy this stuff down for my own little world, like the AI Business Coaching Dojo and AI Coach Assist and all these other products that we've built. So, Shoots, that's my answer, bud.
Okay, so speaking of Elon and obviously that upgrade effect, give us some characteristics of high performing coaches that you've worked with.
Well, okay. So how to spot would you say high performer, an elite performer? They want to be measured, right? They want to compete. They love the leaderboard. The average amongst us, they hate the leaderboard, ignore the leaderboard. Like I was a terrible student. Okay, so guess what? Report card day was not fun for me, right? I went to school with a buddy, Cody Church. He went to Harvard. Brilliant guy. Well, we had 2 very different experiences on report card day, right? I was hoping not to get grounded, and he was skipping home and skipping to school, right? So I didn't want to get measured because I didn't like school. He wanted to be measured because he was amazing at it, right? And I'll tell you that if it's not measured, it's underperforming the end, right? Elite tend to be measurement geeks. I just say, if you can save a suicide, if you can turn around a suicide, if you can save a suicide, you can save a sale, right? If you can save a suicide, you can also save a coaching client that wants to cancel, right? So the elite just have like that inner drive, right? Like, you want to cancel? Look, fair enough, you want to cancel, but I am going to fight tooth and nail and do everything in my power. Because again, my question is, what is your level of belief in your coaching and the needle moving work you do, right? And just think of a Serena, Federer, Schumacher, Michael Schumacher, Jordan, Oprah, right? It's an inner hunger that drives them at insane levels, right? Something bigger than them, and they got over money a long, long time ago. No doubt all of those people, all the greatest of all time type conversation people, they made more money than I could ever spend. Maybe not Phil Mickelson, actually, the golfer, but anyways. Peeps, keep your kids away from gambling. Gambling, I think, when we talk again in 5 years, gambling, every time I watch a hockey game, I watch a football game, there's just nothing but gamble, prop bets. Oh, it ends poorly. Anyway, so if your kids have a gambling app on their phone, delete that son of a gun. I'm telling you, carrying a casino in your pocket just doesn't end well. Anyway, so elite performers, high performers, look, you don't want people to be envious of what you have. You want them to be envious of who you are. And then my question is a little bit like I talked about it a second ago, like, who are you? And by the way, the good news, that can be wildly upgraded in almost record time. But you got to be consistent and you got to follow through on it, right? But at the end of the day, you could wildly improve that. Like, and don't practice to practice, you got to practice to improve, right? Like Buffett was a measurement freak. I never played tennis with Roger Federer. I guarantee he's a measurement freak. And so is Djokovic, right? So is Trying to think of the Spaniard, the Spaniard, Nadal, right? Again, never met the guy, never played tennis with him, never seen him on the practice court, measurement freak. They practice to improve. They don't practice to practice, right? So, and then I would say like elite coaches, I'm going to say elite folks, like, but if you're an elite coach, you're an elite human, right? We don't envy, we study. Right. I often speak to what I'm going to say, somebody, I don't want to call it a low performer, but somebody that is not excelling in, say, the business coaching world. And they spend a lot of time talking, justifying, let's call it making excuses for lack of results. And by the way, very often I will speak to somebody who is not performing at a high level and they take the highest of ownership. Right. But there is no doubt that there's, the justifying and the making excuses. Remember, it's not about doing your best. It's about doing what it takes. So the highest performers amongst us, they spend a lot of time asking questions and listening. And of course, they take 100% ownership and responsibility, and no doubt that would be obvious, right? They're also, the higher performers tend to be more complimentary, without doubt. And I would say, so sometimes we think about, okay, so somebody's really killing it as a business coach and making gobs of money and oh my gosh, and clients and referrals, and they got the campaigns working. But let me tell you, I don't need to speak to them to know that they don't have an absence of bad days, right? They just get over them faster. Like they don't call in sick, right? Like they see feedback. Okay, so there's positive feedback. Positive feedback is your client kills it and says, oh my gosh, I can't wait until next week. And then negative feedback is, look, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm getting behind. I'm thinking that I want to take a 3-month pause. And of course, they take a 3-month pause and they don't end up coming back, right? So what you really got to do is see that quote unquote getting feedback, let's call it, right? It's not a threat to safety, right? They feel, elite performers, I'm going to say, feel more safe with the feedback because they know where they need to improve. They know where they're getting it right. They know where they're getting it wrong. Right? I would dare say that the average amongst us, and I don't think they're taking that approach. And by the way, the approach they would take is that doom loop of depression and then anger, depression and then anger, and around and around and around it goes like a horrible Ferris wheel that you just can't get off, right? The truth is it's ridiculously common. Or the flywheel procrastination. We've talked about that at different times on the podcast. Very simply, put a clock out in front of you. 12 o'clock is procrastinate, 3 o'clock is panic, 6 o'clock is feel guilty, 9 o'clock is make excuses, and then 12 o'clock is more procrastination. So when a flywheel goes properly, it speeds up and expands. But the problem is it can be a negative loop as well as it can be a positive loop, right? Well, you don't want to do that. You got to get off that Ferris wheel, get off that clock, get off the flywheel of procrastination. How do you do it? You stop panicking, you stop feeling guilty, you stop making excuses, you stop beating yourself up, and magically the procrastination goes. We talked about it at the beginning here, like the person that goes to the gym, like when I don't want to go to the gym, that is the day that I'm absolutely positively going to the gym. Right. So I would say that, the elite, the higher performers, look, they have the flywheel of, like, let's just say the reason why does a business coach want to be elite, a high performer? Because they want a good lifestyle, right? The magic of coaching is that you're semi-retired for the rest of your life, right? And the good news is it gets easier and easier and easier, and you become more and more and more valuable as you keep going, right? Unfortunate bit is that it tends to take a year, 3 years, 5 years till you get to that point, right? But that's the game, right? You got to just, keep pounding through and keep improving, keep reading, keep doing the audio, keep doing the training, keep doing the reps. Remember, studying and training, doing it over and over and over again until it becomes instinctual to make those 10 calls a day. But at the end of the day, if you want to upgrade your lifestyle, you take lifestyle. I'm going to do another flywheel, right? Clock. So lifestyle would go at 12 o'clock. Thoughts would go at 3 o'clock. Actions go at 6 o'clock, and then behaviors at 9. Right? What happens to your lifestyle? It upgrades. And if you really manage those thoughts and really manage those actions with discipline and manage the behaviors, your lifestyle will upgrade, but it won't be for a short term. It will be for the long term, right? Which effectively what ends up happening is you improve your identity by doing that. Suddenly you become the person that follows through instead of the person that makes promises to yourself and then lets it down. Like, it's one thing. to make a promise to somebody else and let them down. It's a whole nother thing to make a promise to yourself and let yourself down. That's where your identity takes a flogging, like, 3 or 4 rounds with Mike Tyson. So you got to avoid that. But like, shoots, here's a frame, right? I think this is Naval. True intelligence isn't about being a high performer. True intelligence is measured by getting what you want. Okay, so that's Naval Ravikant. True intelligence, and by the way, I'm making a meal of that, no doubt. He'll say it a little bit differently, but true intelligence is actually getting what you want. And by the way, the nightmare is getting what you want and then realizing you don't want it, right? So like lots of money and no family to share it with. No doubt somebody like that, or building the big business that you dreamt of, and then what happens? It ends up falling over. Businesses get vulnerable as they get bigger, right? And by the way, true wealth, I think importantly, isn't measured in money. It's measured in, without getting all hairy-fairy, but like it's loving relationships, it's loving family, it's a purpose-driven life, right? But most people, like the average entrepreneur, are trying to get big so that they can get rich. And that's not how the story tends to end, right? They get big, they get what they wanted, and fall over. Why? Remember, 90% of businesses fail, right? That's not my opinion. That's what the math says. So margins, why do they fall over? Margins decrease as they get bigger, and then they become vulnerable, right? Somebody says, I built a $10 million company. I say, great. Well, where is it now, right? Oh, sorry to hear that. How about you build a $750,000 business with $500,000 of profits? Small, tight, profitable, and able to stand the test of time, right? 10 million is likely vulnerable. Lots of staff, lots of client, lots of bad debt, lots of things that can go wrong, like a rogue employee. And I can't say that without saying, like, exit strategy is a lower end frame to build a business you could sell tomorrow but don't want to. That's the ultimate business to build with your client. To build a business they could sell tomorrow. How do you sell a business that's systematized and profitable, right? But they don't want to. Why? Because they're having fun and it's systematized and it's profitable, and they can hire somebody else to come in. Who would come in? It's hire the number 2 guy from the number 1 competitor. Right? Become a consultant to your own company and watch it grow. So instead of making the money you were making while you worked and operated it, you could actually make significantly more money by staying at home and allowing the number 2 guy from the number 1 competitor rock it. So amateurs want to make it, pros want to keep it, right? You got to create a plan to keep it. So shits, that's all I got, man. That's my thought. I look a lot there, but like true intelligence is getting what you want. I think that's super high frame. And by the way, the ultimate respect, I've said this many a times, but I think it's important because at the end of the day, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there, right? If there is no exit ramp, you got to keep going around and around and around and around forever, right? So you got to define the exit ramp. But the ultimate respect isn't paid to those who make it. The ultimate respect is paid to those who make it and keep it. How'd I do, Shoots? That's what I would say.
It's really good. I'm just, it's interesting. I was asked a question if there's any stories of an entrepreneur that inspires you, and it's like, man, I am sure that is an extensive list. So I hope this isn't too deep of a rabbit hole, but can you give us a couple? Because we don't need this to turn into a Joe Rogan podcast every hour.
Good, Shoots. Sadly, dude, you saw the notes on my phone, make your eyes water. So Elon Musk, already mentioned him, love him or hate him. I mean, if that guy doesn't inspire you from a business perspective, not sure what would. Sam Walton, his book Made in America, it's about Walmart. It's a must read. Jeff Bezos, undeniably, one of the greatest of all time, no doubt. Biggest thing about him, the biggest takeaway from Jeff Bezos is he solved 3 problems: low price, huge selection, fast delivery. And then he put all money, all time, all resources, all his people in solving those 3 problems at the highest level, right? Magic. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger for sure. Ray Kroc, I love the fact that he started at the ripe old age of 52 and went on to become a super legend. One story, Shoots, that to say that it's inspiring would be understatement of the year, but like Dana White and UFC know the story well. And I just say You'll be remembered for what you refuse to. You'll be remembered for what you refuse, and I always capitalize refuse when I send that out in an email. What you refuse to give up on. So loosely, like Dana White, right, and his partners buy the UFC for like $2 million in like 2000, right? The previous owners had to sell off all their assets because they were avoiding bankruptcy, and they even sold the UFC domain name. I think it was to a computer company for peanuts, right? So Dana's a little bit flustered, but at the same time, he's not deterred, because really what he does, he sees something that other people don't see, right? So he's got imagination running wild, much like Walt Disney. He pictured Mickey Mouse before anybody else could see it. Dana White saw something that others couldn't, and he kind of, he refused to stop. Or at least I think that's what the results would prove. So unfortunately, early on, the story's like out there, right? John McCain watches a UFC fight. He's totally alarmed. He calls it barbaric. He calls it human cockfighting. And he's so, up in arms, he basically managed to ban UFC in 36 states. And also all the major cable networks then drop UFC from pay-per-view as a result of that ban and what basically John McCain had to say, right? And that wasn't bad enough. John McCain went on to get some heavy-hitting position in the government. And effectively now what he was doing is he was controlling the cable industry, right? So Dana, think of the UFC. They need venues to hold events, or they don't have a sport, they don't have a business, right? But all the major venues were rejecting them. And you got to have high profile venues in order to get high profile folks. Well, why did they reject them? Because they were totally worried about the crowd that this crazy barbaric new fighting style would attract, right? They didn't want those types of people. So UFC 12, it managed to get to Madison Square Garden, right? It's like, oh my gosh, in New York, this is amazing. The problem, 10 days before the event, New York bans MMA statewide, right? What does he have to do? He's got to move the entire production to a lame convention center in Alabama, had to do it overnight, like a total nightmare, right? And then only one venue basically agrees to take UFC at all, and it was the Taj Mahal in Atlantic City. And that becomes their only venue, and not exactly the best location, right? Nevada, where do you want to be? Nevada. Well, that's the most important fight market in America. If you've ever followed boxing, well, they won't sanction them anymore. And then New York bans them. Not only does it ban them, but it bans them for 19 years, right? So imagine Dana White. He's running around. He's working like a dog, 2 years, working the phone, sending text messages, flying place to place. And he can, he's getting nowhere, but he can see it, but nobody else can, right? And he's showing, what's he doing? He's showing up at ESPN. He's got highlight reels, pleading to get 20 seconds of highlights on SportsCenter, because he thinks that if people could just see 20 seconds of this, if they could just see it, they'll be able to see what he says or he sees. But guess what? Not happening, right? He offered it to HBO for free just to get the exposure. Guess what HBO said? Thanks, but no thanks. He offered it to Spike TV. Guess what they said? Hard no. And basically in about, I'm going to say mid 2000s, let's say 2005, the investors and Dana White basically had lost north of $35 million. They got zero profit, zero traction, very little hope, right? So Lorenzo Fertitta, I believe his name is. So that's one of the investors, right? There was a couple brothers. But at the end of the day, he calls Dana. One of the investors calls Dana, a very important one, in 2005. And he says, look, I know it's your dream, but we just can't keep funding this, right? What I want you to do, I want you to see what you can get for this thing, and let's move on. And this is in 2005. And Dana, understandably at this point, right? And he's tired, he's over it, but at the same time, he can still see it, but he assumes it's game over, right? He makes calls all day. In the end, so he calls the investors, right? And he says, look, a couple of boxing companies are listening, and we can get 7 or 8 million. That's the most we're going to be able to get. And by the way, they want to buy it. Why? Just to shut it down, right? They just want to make the threat. They just want it to go away, because my assumption is that they probably see a little bit of what Dana White saw, but they just wanted to bury it. So 5 years, blood, sweat, tears, 35 million burned through. John McCain effectively, crushed their dream. They're going to end up lighting $30 million on fire to sell at this point. And the investors say, what? Okay, let's just sell it to the boxing guys. They're going to shut it down. It's fine. And of course, Dana is crushed, but he's ready to move on, right? The deal's all but done. And then out of nowhere, the investors called Dana and they go, look, screw it. We're this far into it. Let's keep going. But they all agreed they got to change the approach. What they were doing wasn't working, right? So the next day, Dana wakes up and he's got an idea. He's watched Survivor, watched The Bachelor, watched Real Housewives of Orange County, right? Scary, yes. But he calls the investors and he says, I've got an idea. A reality show called The Ultimate Fighter. They love the idea, right? So he pitches every network, and what's the problem? Nobody says yes, right? And then out of nowhere, so he's pounding the phones, getting nowhere. But Spike TV calls, and they agree to take it on. But the problem is that the way they've worked it out, and they got a pretty good idea as to exactly what they want to do, it's going to take $10 million to produce to get it done. And normally the network would take a good portion of those expenses on, but they refuse to take any, right? So Dana and the investors are now like, oh my gosh, gulp. We're going to put another $10 million into this. We're going to get it to air. And of course, they all agree that it's a Hail Mary, but if it doesn't work, it's over. And they won't sink another dollar into the UFC. That's all agreed, right? It doesn't work. UFC is toast. It's game over. So the good news, the show finally premieres and it's insanely popular, right? The bad news, at the halfway point of the season of The Ultimate Fighter, Spike's president gets fired, right? What's the network now doing? They're now ghosting Dana and he can't get a response, right? The show is popular, but no advertising, no promotion. All of a sudden, the numbers are starting to drop, right? So Dana's messaging and texting and calling every day. Total silence, total ghosting from Spike TV, right? And very importantly, like any reality show, the final episode is the big event, quote unquote, right? So it's got to have the most promotion. It's got to have the most advertising. It's got to be a lead up. It's got to have the most excitement. And that's how you get renewed, because this one season wasn't going to get it done. They needed to get this thing renewed. They just sunk $10 million into it. So they wanted to be able to get a second season. And again, to make sure that UFC could finally get some traction and get going, right? So Spike had agreed. And by the way, so importantly though, Spike had agreed to do a massive amount of publicity under the old boss, but they do nothing to promote it, right? So the finale airs without any promotion, and it's Griffin Forrest, and a guy named Bonner, right? So remarkably, 2 million people watch two guys absolutely beat one another into submission, and ratings are through the roof for the final episode. So how does it go? The top executives of Spike decided to actually come to the finale because they wanted to see this thing. Sounded like a good time. And after the fight, they were so impressed at the 3 rounds and basically how it went, the energy in the room. The head honcho at Spike at that time walks Dana out into the parking lot behind the venue, pulls out a napkin, and signs a season 2 deal on the spot. It's like on a napkin in the parking lot. And on the back of that finale and 3, what I'm going to call incredible rounds between these two fighters, again, Griffin and Bonner, I believe their names are, and the energy in the stadium, the sports explodes as a result of that. Like, translation, it worked. And in a matter of months, UFC had like 1 million pay-per-views. And Forbes, look, the rest of the story is well documented, right? But Forbes values UFC at like $1 billion within 24 months of that finale. Fox gives them like $120 million for 12 months. ESPN, with their tail between their legs, calls up and then offers them $300 million a year. And again, I think it's towards 2020. UFC sells for like $4 billion. You do that math, it's like a 1,950x return on the investment. And by the way, John McClane admits that it's a mistake. And New York comes back and, legalizes MMA after 19 years, saying, go away, don't come back. Conor McGregor, the first fight in New York, Conor McGregor wins 2 titles on the one night. And that was basically what catapulted him to, earning, I don't know what it is, but he's earned like $100 million on the back of his UFC profile and the platform that they gave him, right? So again, Dana White, he couldn't get a little bit long-winded shoots, but Dana White couldn't get 30 seconds on ESPN for highlights. And then they ended up paying $1 billion, right? So, so importantly, kind of trying to get here, UFC would go on and say something to the effect like, without McCain doing what he did, right, which was, call it cockfighting and, getting it, banned, etc. He says the UFC would be dead, right? For all of the negatives and the problems that he caused, he was the one that not direct. He's the one that indirectly provided a platform for the sport to become what it is, right? And in fact, Dana White himself, he considers, he said this, you can see it out there publicly, that John McCain is the guy who really launched the UFC. If it wasn't for him, the sport wouldn't be where it is right now. So translation, worst nightmare, greatest gift. And how often is that the case, right? Like I've had friends, they go through divorces and it is a nightmare and it's a gong show and totally understandable. But guess what? 18 months later, in some cases, 3 months later, 6 months later, but let's say 18 months later, they're, it's the greatest gift, right? They were in a marriage. It was not working out, despite the fact that they wanted to stay and the kids and everything else. They're in significantly better shape. So Shoots, I want to make sure, so message for me, for you, for the business coaches, the next time you try to run an event and no one shows up, I want you to think of Dana White and what he went through, right? Because we all see the $1 billion checks and the fame and the success and the full stadiums, right? That's just not the case. Like I know my own experience of building, a very successful business coaching company. It's been the most insane roller coaster ride of all times, ups and downs and catastrophe after catastrophe that all led to success in different ways, mostly indirectly, very seldom directly, right? So, and remember, no one waits in line for a flat roller coaster. Just, you gotta learn to live. You got to learn to enjoy marriages ups and downs, businesses ups and downs, your relationship with your coaching clients ups and downs, right? It's just the best coaching relationship that's lasted a decade. I promise you, it's a series of roller coaster rides where you're going up, going down, and the trick is just to bloody keep going. And success stories like that, Shoots, I got to throw this back to you here, but they're all around you and they all unfold like Dana White's, right? Like, Warren Buffett, obviously success story on steroids, right? Just retired. Hope he's having a great time. But look up Berkshire Hathaway. It's a failed textile company. He bought a textile company and the thing failed wildly. Apparently it's working out all right, right? Like Amazon, there was a time when Amazon stock was down 90% overnight, right? What did Jeff Bezos do? He got to work. He went to the gym. He's looking through the windscreen of the car instead of the rear view mirror. He was getting in his reps, studying versus training. He just got to work and just did what he needed to do. He didn't call in sick. The guy had a mission and he wasn't going to let himself die wondering. Remember, you'll be remembered for what you refuse to give up on. And then the only question is, and very importantly, what will you refuse to give up on? And if I could lean you in any one way, 90% of business owners ultimately fail. Why? They buy advertising. They pay gobs of money for new websites with a plan of getting leads online. They go to networking groups to try and find customers, right? I'll let you decide how often that works. What do they really need and what's the real problem to solve? They need an operating system installed. They need an upsell, a downsell, a cross-sell, a proper upfront offer. They got to control their costs on the way up. They need a market dominating position to separate themselves from the competitors so they don't become a commodity where people can just, call around and shop. So, and by the way, when they install the operating system, and then they advertise, and then they get their messaging out, and then they get the new website, and then they go to the networking group, guess what? It'll work, right? But that's the whole idea. But they need the upsell, the downsell, the cross-sell. The real problem to solve is not, and sometimes it's advertising. And again, I'm advertising right now as you're listening to this. I got ads on, I got lots of ads out there. But we have done the work, and we have created, we've eaten our own cooking. And we've installed the operating system. So again, we managed to make advertising really, really profitable. The chiropractor, the dentist, the landscaping company, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, they're just not in that position with certainly 80% probability, if not 95%. Anyway, Shoot, so that Dana White, love everything about the man. My gosh, trials and tribulations on steroids, brother.
One of my favorites as well, hands down. His interviews are legendary. Just does not care.
Yeah.
Like it's just he's dropping F. He doesn't care. But that's what makes Dana Dana. Update on that too, by the way, because you didn't mention it, the Paramount deal. So the UFC, right? They come together with Paramount in a massive industry-shifting agreement, $7.7 billion to get rid of all their pay-per-views, and now, so it's $1.1 billion a year for 7 years, which is, and I'm reading this. This is from AI. Which is double the $550 million the UFC was averaging in its previous deal with ESPN. So like you think of that, right? So now, but who's the ultimate winner here, right? The ultimate winner, again, this is advertising for the UFC, because for the first time, fans can watch numbered events like UFC 324 with a standard Paramount Plus subscription at no additional cost, rather than paying $70 to $80 per event.
Nice. Well, there you go, Shoots. There you go. I love it.
7.7 bill. How far they've come. Anyways,
Shoots. So was it worth? So Shoots, though, as you say that, though, right? And the trials and the tribulations and the government and the cables and the the ghosting, he refused to give up, despite the fact that there was a little bit of a well-documented bump where he was like, yeah, man, this is done. But you know what, as a team, they surround yourself with high-level achievers, with winners, right? People who practice to improve versus practice to practice. Obviously those investors, they believed in him, and he said, you know what, go give this one more red hot go, man. Let's go. So
yeah, and his whole management philosophy is it's all about building like a family sort of feel and environment, and that's all he cares about. It's like, you need some time off for this or that. Yes, like it's family first. People may have the wrong idea about Dana White, but anyways, I don't know him personally. I love the man's story. I love the no quit. I love all of that. It's insane what they went through. And of course it's going to streaming, like everything. The NFL will be on streaming in no time. Like it's the NHL will be on streaming in no time, right?
100%. It will. The Super Bowl will very shortly be on Prime, Netflix, whatever. No question. No, it's just a matter of time.
As long as they get better announcers, apparently that NFL Anyway, Shoots, I'm gonna button up this episode. That was awesome. So thanks everybody for tuning into another episode of Business Coaching Secrets. Hey, if you're not on the inside getting access to Carl's daily emails, you just want more information on how to build, grow, and scale your coaching company, do yourself a solid and go visit focus.com and subscribe today. Also, if you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe, and also share with a fellow coach. And while you're at it, leave us a review. That is it for another episode. We will see you on the next one. And remember, folks, progress equals happiness. Take care, everybody.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.